Welcome back to another episode. We are currently traveling Australia and we are halfway around, mate. So that means we've got to do some maintenance, and this episode we're doing our wheel bearings on the van. So I've never done them and I happened to do them a couple of days ago. So we're going to flick to that now and we'll show you how I attempted to do wheel bearings for the first time and the things that I was aware of and made sure that I checked, and things that you should check if you want to give wheel bearings a go yourself. All right, enjoy. Okay, so now it's time to do our wheel bearings. I actually have never done them before. I've never done wheel bearings. I understand the principles of it and I'm reasonably mechanically minded, so I'm going to give it a go. We're going to jack our van up. We have got a bit of a drama with our van, as we may have mentioned in some previous episodes, where standard bottle jacks and things don't really work with our trailing arm suspension. There's not really any kind of nice flat spot to jack on our trailing arms, where the jack won't have a tendency to want to pop out. So we went and bought one of these Trailmates, which is our jockey wheel most of the time, but it also doubles up as a jack. So there's an attachment that goes on here, which we'll show you going on, and then it's actually designed to clip into these brackets here. So we jack the van from that point, and then I've got some timber blocks and things that I'm going to put under the suspension and then lower it down. So tyres are off the ground, so we've got to get the van jacked and then we can start pulling everything apart, mate. So I'm going to do one side first, and then I'll show you how to do wheel bearings on this this side. All right, so I've done the first side. It's actually pretty easy, to be honest. It's just the most crucial thing is making sure you keep everything clean, and as we go, you know, we make sure we knock all our braces in and out and everything properly so we don't damage anything. And yeah, then we just got to set our play at the end so we don't have too much pressure on the bearings or preload, but we also don't have excessive float or where the hub will flop around. So anyway, we just got to strip this down. So it's all spinning freely. If you've never done it before and your bearings are pretty good, you can always give it a bit of a feel and try and feel if there's any play. Sometimes it's easier done with the tyre on and you can feel, so that'll give you a reference point, right, for your bearings. If your bearings are good, then that would be something that you can compare to as you're setting yours. This one, for me, I don't feel any slop whatsoever, but then when I spin it, it spins, right, nice and easy. Now you can hear the brakes grabbing, right, a bit. And when I did the other side, I had a bit of sand and stuff in there, so I'm expecting to see like some red dirt and things in there. So either way, you want it to be able to spin relatively freely, right? If you're spinning it and you're not getting a few revolutions, probably a bit tight. But we'll talk more about that as we set it up. So first things first, you got a dust cover on the front, and then you've got an outer bearing, which is here, and then there's another bearing on the back side, which is called the inner bearing. So just get like a hammer and a chisel or a screwdriver with a real sharp point, and you just want to knock in here, and we're just trying to get this dust cover to come away. Ideally, try not to damage it, because if you don't have a new one with your kit, you'll want to reuse this. So I'll just work it round. Here it comes. There we go. All right, so something worthwhile having is like a container or something to keep all your bits in, right, all your old bits. So we'll just pop that dust cover in there. All right, so when you open up any kind of bearing, you're going to have this split pin here, and what's called a castle nut, right, which is this nut which has slots which you're allowed to put the split pin in. So got to get the split pin out, so kind of just want to get in behind here and bend that away. Alright, so you just straighten that out. Yeah. Alright, once you can get a little bit, good trick is pair of needle nose. If you don't want to reuse your split pin, sorry, pair of side cutters, and you just grab them and just pull, and then pull. You see how the split pin is coming out, and the cutters actually bite into the split pin. So just use that. Boom, out she comes. All right, cool. So castle nut. Now notice how your castle nut is. You should be able to normally undo a castle nut without having a shifter normally, unless they're bound up. So this one here is a little bit tight, but see, it's just like super loose. So that you don't do them up tight. Doing them up tight is not good. So anyway, we'll pull this off like that. Throw that in there, and now this hub's ready to come off. So there's going to be a washer in here, and the bearing from the outer race. So here we go. So there we go. So we've got a washer, and we've got the outer bearing. So there's no burn spots on here, which is nice. And then if we look inside on the race here, you can see that bearing race is nice and shiny. I'm gonna have to come in closer. So we're looking at this bit of metal in here. Need to get down more. Yeah, so we're looking at this surface here, and you're looking for any burnt patches or discoloration, which would indicate that the bearing's been too hot. You can also have a look at your grease. So I mean, ours is going black, and we probably should have done our bearings a fair while ago. We've probably done anywhere up to 20,000 K on these without even re-greasing them. But you can even see, like in here, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it's still like the grease is quite blue still, which is good. It means that you know, it hasn't got too hot, grease hasn't gone off color, and there's also clearly no water or anything in the grease, so it means that we haven't had water in the bearings, which is good. Anyway, make sure you got plenty of rags for this kind of job, because you're going to need it. But once you get that castle nut and that bearing off, this should just slide off, and you just got to try and slide it nice and evenly. Well, there we go. All right, so we've got the outer bearing and the outer race, which is here, and then on the other side you've got your inner bearing, and then we've got a dust cover here, but you can see like our dust cover, it's obviously been like little bits of oil and grease coming just past it, and then we've had a whole lot of dirt attract to it. So we'll clean that up in a bit, but let's have a look at the brakes, right? So we just got the brakes off. So we've got drum brakes on these. So our pads are here. So we've got two pads, right? Two pads here, and then we've got our magnet. So our magnet's there. So the magnet, when you've got electromagnetic brakes, your 12 volt power comes through, energizes this magnet coil, and what that does is this magnet, as you can see, there's rub marks here, rubs on the inside of your drum, right? So when it magnets, what it does is, because this is spring loaded, it wants to come out, and when it comes out, it's trying to stick to the inside edge here of your drum. So obviously your tire's rotating, right? because you're going down the road. So then what happens is this magnet grabs the drum and then is pulled with the tire, right? And it's pulled this way. And you can see as it gets pulled, this shoe moves, which applies onto your inner edge here of the drum. So with these sort of brakes, you're making sure that your magnet's nice and free, so it can attract and then return, as well as all this mechanism here is moving nice and freely, which ours is. So if you got something that's bound up, you probably don't have brakes that are working. So also have a good look at your shoes here. So ours are wearing nice and evenly, and we've still got plenty of brake pad left on these, so we don't have to replace them. Otherwise, obviously, while you're doing bearings, you can replace your brake shoes. So all we're going to do is we're just going to clean all this up. So we'll pull all the bearings and the races out of these hubs because we're putting new bearings in, and then we'll go through, we'll clean up the inside of our hub and all the brake drum linings, and then we'll come and we'll just give this a bit of a clean, get a lot of the dirt out, a lot of the sand, and clean everything up. So something else worthwhile doing while we do bearings. But while you're here, just clean your hub, with your stub axle, sorry. So just going to give this a good clean. And then what you're doing with your stub axle is you're also looking for any kind of burn marks, right? Of course, as I was saying, yeah, we want to check the stub axle. So I've just brought my rubbish bag around from the other side, which I forgot. And we're just going to get all the old grease and everything off. And as we clean this up, we'll be able to check for any kind of scoring or anything that's going on our stub axle, which would indicate that the bearings have been excessively hot and things are starting to bind up. So I think that's just grease. But yeah, you want to try and remove all the old grease that you can, because you don't really want to mix old grease with new grease when we go to re-grease this later. And it's nice working with clean stuff as well. So all right, so yeah, we'll just you just have a feel of in here. Feels nice. There's no pitting, there's no edges. It all feels nice and smooth, and there's no discoloration, right? There's like bluey purple on your stub axle. You'd probably want to get that addressed, probably get your get a new stub axle, because that would show that there's been a lot of heat at some point through your stub axle, which means that it could be fatiguing, and then you could have a stub axle that cracks and is not good, mate. So anyway, that's all cleaned up. All right, we're now going to take this whole hub around off my father-in-law's driveway and onto the dirt, and we're going to pull out all the bearings, all the races, and then give this a big clean down. I've got a can of degreaser, and I've also got a can of brake cleaner. So you just got to be aware with degreaser, it does leave an oily residue, and because we have got our brake drum here, we want to make sure that we'll use degreaser first, and then at the end we'll use brake cleaner in on the brake drum to remove any oily residue so that the brakes continue to work. Anyway, first things first, we've got to knock out this inner dust seal. So you can pry it out with like a screwdriver if you want, but the easiest thing is to flip it upside down, and the actual bearing that's here, so this is the one from the outer side, but what we'll be able to do is when we flip it over, we'll be able to see this edge, and what we're going to do is we're going to knock the bearing that's here into this dust seal and push it all out as one. So you just get hammer and a punch, and if you can look down in here, you can see that here, this is the bearing that I'm tapping on. So we're going to hit one tight hit here, and then on the other side, 180 degrees opposite, right? I'm going to hit there. So you're kind of going like 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, right? So you just work it nice and evenly. Boom. Out it comes, out the bottom. So we'll just give our everything a bit of a clean up. Alright, there's just piles of grease in there. Alright, and then if we flip this out the way, boom. So there's our bearing with stuff on it, so we can throw that in there. And then there's our old dust cap. So that's out of the way now. So all that's left in here is both bearing races. So our inner bearing race, which is this one here, which is the one we just knocked the bearing out of, and the outer bearing race. So we're now going to go and knock those out. So we'll start with the small one, or the outer bearing, but before we do, we're just going to try and drag out some of this grease, right? Just so we can see a bit more kind of what we're doing. And have plenty of rags, because you're going to go through them. Okay, so if you did want to reuse your bearings, it wouldn't look like there are any heated spots. What you're going to do is you're just not going to do this next step, which is knock out these races. You're going to leave them in there, and you're just going to get all the old grease out of your bearings by using like a degreaser or petrol or anything like that to get all the old grease out before we put new grease in. But we're going to replace our bearings, even though they look good. So now we can really see this edge. You can sort of see how it's nice and uniform. There's no pitting or anything like that. So these bearings are okay, but we're just going to replace them anyway, because we've done the Gibb River Road and a lot of hard tracks, Bloomfield Track, Fraser Island, and a few other gravel roads. So just going to replace them, mate. All right. So anyway, you can inspect the condition of your race if you're keeping them, and then you can work out if you need new bearings or not. We're just going to replace them either way. So flip it over, and then what we're doing is, like we saw the edge of the bearing that we just hit to knock out this dust cap, I can now down in here see the inner edge of the bearing race, right, for the outer bearing. So same thing, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. You can also hit 3 and 9 o'clock as well if you need at any point, and it's just a couple of taps, and you're just working this all the way out. Boom. Alright, that's out. Flip this up. Boom. Out pops our race. Alright, so then we've just got to get this last race out here, our inner race. So we're going to flip it over, and then I can see the inner race edge. So we're just going to do the same thing, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, until we knock this race out. There we go, out she comes. That's our other bearing race. So throw that in your bucket, and then now with all the bearings and everything out, we can get into all the grease and clean out all the old grease that's left inside this hub. So there's no clean way of doing it. It's just scoop out as much as you can, and then once you've got a fair amount of it out, start using your can of degreaser. So we spray all this, spray all in here. So we can see like there's a lot of like dirty grime build-up where there's been a bit of weeping from that dust seal. So just let all this get cleaned up. Ideally you try and re-grease bearings if they don't need to be replaced every sort of 10,000 odd Ks. or if you've had a trailer sitting around for a long time. And then you replace bearings as needed. So, and if you ever want to know what bearings you need, on your actual bearing race, there'll actually be a number, right? So there's a number here, so HR30210J. so that's the bearing, that's one bearing, and then on your small one there's the same thing. So this says Japan, this bit here, there we go. So there's this number here, so that's the bearing number and size. Whenever you are getting bearings, make sure you get good proper quality bearings. We've gone and just got genuine Alco bearings, which are Japanese made, because our suspension and these hubs are all Alco, and it was easy to buy it as a kit, mate. So this is the back end of our wheel studs. I've just got a lot of dirt in there, so that magnet from the brake rubs right here, so sand and stuff's going to wear out your magnet a lot quicker. So it's always good if you can get it out, just get it out. Yeah, so you can see like all the grains of dirt and everything that was all getting stuck in there. So if the magnet's rubbing over there, that sand's just going to wear out your brake magnet. Obviously we use degreaser for all of that. So now we want to just finish it off with some brake cleaner, just to get any kind of oily residue off. You don't have to use brake cleaner down inside your hub if you don't want, but definitely on your brake drum, definitely want to clean that off. There we go. All right, so yeah, you can have a look at our drum, and it looks nice, right? There's no uneven wearing. Be good. Yeah, so this is great, right? So this is all in. So what we're going to do now is we've just got to clean up our castle nut and the washer, because we're going to reuse that washer. That's good. And our washer. Alright, last thing we're going to do is we're just going to go around and with a clean rag, we're going to just give the brake pads a bit of a clean up with some brake cleaner, and then we'll be ready to come back here and we'll start packing we'll pack our bearings, and then we'll knock our new racers in. So brake cleaner, and let's go. Very gentle when you're doing the magnet, you don't break the wires. So if you ever do need to get your shoes off, you've got these spring-loaded pins here, and these are your shoe retaining pins, so you can just push these in and turn them, pop out, and then your shoes will come out. So we just make sure that all of these are seated well. You know, you've got no cracks on any of your springs. All right, a little bit of a clean up. Make sure everything's free, as we looked at before. All right, it all moves easily. None of your springs are broken, and then you've got a good amount of pad still left on these. You know, 3 or 4 mil is good. and they feel nice and even. There's no big gouges in your pads, and that's it, mate. All right, so we'll grab the bearing kit that we've got, and we'll open it up and we'll show you what's in there. All right, so this is our kit. We actually cryovac these before we came, just to try and keep moisture out, because I knew I wasn't going to use these bearings for a while, so just didn't want any water getting into them because they're brand new. So this is what comes with our kit. We have a full set of bearings. So we've got our outer bearing, which is the small one, our inner bearing, which is the big one. We've got a new outer dust cap, and then this one behind here is a new inner dust cap, and a new split pin. So yeah, as I said, all you've got to retain is your washer and castle nut. Right, so we'll pull out our bearings first. So something that's super important with bearings is that they're made as a pair, right? So your bearing here and your race are a pair, so you can't mix and match pairs. So if you've got multiple of the same bearing size, you need to make sure that you keep the bearing with the race, right? Now, you never put bearings in dry, so we've got to pre-grease these, or what you call packing a bearing. So we're going to do that. So the way you do that is, it's a nice fun messy job, mate. So if you're doing it outside like I am, you want to have some clear Ziploc bags, because once you've packed the bearing, obviously you don't want dust and dirt getting into it and getting in the grease. So we'll set this aside, just open them up like that. So I'll whack a pair of these on. So you can get tools to pack bearings. Keep putting these on back to front. You can get actual tools to pack bearings, where you put all the grease in the bottom, and then it's kind of like a press. It's like a cup, and you stick the bearing in, and then there's like a plunger, and you push it down and it packs the bearing. Or you can do it the old manual way, which is the messy way. So the way you do that is get some good quality grease. So this is heavy duty premium grease, so for wheel bearings, right, boat trailers, all that sort of stuff. So it's like a good marine heavy duty high temperature bearing grease. So just grab a decent scoop of that, and whatever's your non-dominant hand or whatever, like stick it in the hand that you prefer, in the palm of the hand, right, like that. So I am kind of ambidextrous, but I do prefer left. So holding the bearing in my left hand, what you're going to do is you're just going to pinch away at the bearing, right? And you start with see how the bearing is like a bigger gap on this side and it's narrow on this side. So we're going to start on the big side, and the idea is that it's what's called cupping. And what we're trying to do is you keep going until we start to see the grease come out the top here in one location. But you should be starting to see how grease is coming out on this inner edge. Do you see that, Jackie? Mm-hmm. That's coming out there, and there's none here. So you're looking for grease to work its way up between each roller, right? And then once it's come all the way up, so this is coming out, push that back in, we just work our way around and go again. So just rotate round, and we just got to do this and work our way the whole way around until we've packed the bearing the whole way, mate. So there you go. So you see these little bubbles coming out? Mm-hmm. So that's what you're aiming for. And then once you've done that, grab it, rotate your bearing, do it again. Get it. Great. Alright, so there's grease the whole way around. So kind of just spin the bearing. Right, now make sure that grease gets in absolutely everywhere. So, and then this is good, mate. So now Jackie, as well as holding the camera, she's gonna try and just open that Ziploc bag for me so we can sit this in here and keep it dust free. Good if I drop it? Mm-hmm. Sorry about the grease on your hand. Mm-hmm. All right, so then we'll do the same thing with this one. So you got the big side and the small side, so we're just going to start again, mate. It might actually be easier to see the grease coming through on this one. There you go, so you see it coming through here? Alright, so that's pretty much packed the whole way around, which is good. So we're going to do the same thing, try and grab that, hold this in a race and rotate the bearings. That'll just allow everything to get a good grease up. Plenty of grease on there. Mm-hmm. There we go. Keep your hands a fair bit cleaner, eh? Mm-hmm. Even though I'm doing most of the job without gloves on. That's fine. Okay, so we're just cleaning up our old outer bearing races, right, or bearing cups, because we're going to use those to knock the new ones in. All right, we're going to knock the big one in first. So you sort of do everything in reverse, right? So we knocked the small one out first, then we knocked the big race out. So we're going to do things in reverse, right, on the way back in. So this one came out last. We'll knock this one back in first. So you've got a fat edge and a thin edge. Thin edge is always out, okay? So, and then what you're going to do is you're going to get the fat edge of your other one and sit it on top, and we're going to hit on this because we don't want to be damaging this edge by hitting it with the hammer. So just make sure, yeah, 100% happy with how this all is in here. It's all nice and clean. So we set that on nice and square, and then we're just gonna, a little bit of a tap. We might even just try and just start it. All right, so it's, okay. So what you're listening for, if you listen to this tinny sound, we're listening for that to change, right? Which, what that will mean is that this race here is seated all the way down inside the hub. So another good thing about using this is not just that it disperses the load of the hammer, but now you can see that this race is flush, and it's actually got to go down another 10 mil inside this hub. So by knocking this down, what will happen is now this race is starting to get stuck too. So you just keep going until you hear this sound change. Right, that's in. So you hear how it's not really tinging anymore. Do you hear the difference, Jackie? A little bit?
A little bit.
Yeah. The other thing that you tend to notice as well is that your hammer will bounce back a lot more because that energy can't be transferred as that race is continuing to be knocked in. So anyway, we're there, right? What you then do is we've obviously got to get this old race out because we can't have two races in for one bearing. So you're just going to do the same thing that you did before, which is spin it around, grab your punch. Now obviously there's two races in there, so you just got to make sure that we're picking up the outer one and it's the same 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock until we knock it out. This one normally comes out pretty quickly because it's only in there halfway. There we go. Boom. There's the old race. You can throw that back in the tub. And there's our new race that's all in there. So what you can do is if you want, you can actually look through from this side, and you'll be able to see the bottom edge of where that race should be seated, and you can make sure that it actually is up against that. So if I spin it around and I have a look in there for me, I can see that that race is the whole way down. Now if you want to be doubly sure about it, you can grab a punch and just very gently check it. That's fine. Sweet. All right, so now we just got to do the outer one. So same deal, we've got our new outer race here, or our outer cup. So fat side is down, sits like that. We'll get it just started. Like that. Then we'll grab our other old one, fat side down. See how it's changed? See how that's more high pitched? Same deal, now we've got to get this old one out. So spin it over, and you can actually see this a lot easier on the small one. You can actually see the two different races. So this first inner edge, that's that new one that we've knocked in, and then just lower than it here, when I'm running that around, that's the old one that we're knocking out. So you want to make sure you're not hitting on this one. You want to make sure you're picking up the old one. And then 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, boom, straight out. All right, there we go. Throw that in there. There's our new race, it's all knocked in. Of course, you can always just check it. So, feels good. Check it from the back side. And on the back side here as well, you can see what we were looking at. So you can see, if I poke my finger up, you can see this edge here, and you can see that there's no gap between the back of the bearing race and this inner housing. So hopefully that kind of comes out. But that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that they're seated. If your race is not seated properly, when you tighten up that castle nut and we go to put it all back together, what will happen is the pressure that's on that will actually force that race further into the hub, which then means your bearings are going to become loose, and then your whole wheel will wobble. So it's important that you get that done properly. Like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start with a bit of grease. So you've got your two races, right? And then in between, there's just part of the hub. So we're just going to put a whole lot of grease in between the two bearing races. So you can do it with a glove if you want, or you just get in there and wipe it around. Now, if you're wondering how much grease to buy, this is a 500 gram tub, and I'm probably going to use about 2/3 to 3/4 of it to do my bearing. So obviously it depends on how big your hubs are and how big your bearings are, but don't think that like a 500 gram tub is loads, because you'll actually probably use more than you think. Especially if you're like me and you tend to get it over your fingers and you're wiping a lot off on rags. Get a bit of grease in and around there. Doesn't matter if you put too much in, because when we go to slide this over the stub axle, any excessive grease will just push out the front and we can clean it off then. So, all right, so at this point, this is where we're going to go get our inner bearing, or the big bearing for us, and we're going to drop that into this hub. Yeah. All right, so now we're just going to drop this bearing into the race. I'm just trying to keep as little grease on this surface as possible. Right, so that bearing's in there, right, sitting in there nicely, nice and even. The last thing to do on this side is to replace this dust cover. So we don't want any dirt or anything getting inside here. So we'll just open this up. got our brand new dust cover. Now you need to put a bit more grease on the inside in this inner edge here as well. Just a single finger, just going to kind of wipe grease on the inside and clean up the outer edge of this this dust seal. So you really just want grease on that inner lip, because this inner lip here, this inner edge that we fill with grease, sits up against the bearing, so you want there to be plenty of grease around that. So just like this, right? So it should be nice and clean, but you got grease on the inside. All right, so when you got that done, it's now just a matter of putting this in and knocking this in really gently, right? Now you can also use, just like that, where it just feels nice and even. Right. Cool, so now you can flip this over and it will pack a bit more grease in, and then we're good to try and put this whole hub on. Just wipe a bit more grease down inside. Just make sure it's not coming out the back side of the hub, and that's all nice and clean. Alright, so now it's just going to whack this hub back on, and then once this is on, we'll be able to put the small bearing in the front. So I'm just cleaning up this edge because this is where our top dust cap, yeah, this is where our top dust cap sits in, so just clean this edge. Beautiful. Alright, so now we're ready to go on, so we're just going to line this up as square as we can and push it on gently, and just be gentle, because this rubber seal at the back here, we don't want to tear that seal. So last thing we've actually got to do is just put a smearing of grease over your stub axle. Alright, there's heaps of grease obviously in the hub, but this is just to make sure that nothing's metal on metal and everything slides over nicely. Cool. Alright, so now it's time to slide this on. So just going to look over the back, make sure we're nice and center, push it over, get to a point where it's kind of firm, and then that goes on. Alright, so now we can get this other bearing, pull it out of the bag, just turn that for us. Alright, and we're very gently just going to slide this over, and then once that's in, we can put a little bit of pressure on. We just got to get this bearing now to sit on and go on like that, just like that. There we go. So that's good, right? So you can see as soon as we let go, the pressure is coming out, right, because it's sliding out of that cone, which is fine. You just got to make sure that that's in properly when we go to put our washer and nut on, right? So it's nice and clean, that's nice and clean. Again, we'll just put smearing of grease over this so there's nothing metal on metal, nothing's dry. That's pretty good. So we'll just push that over like that, and then grab our castle nut, making sure that the parts of the castle or the slots are on the outside. I'm just going to push that in and just give this a wiggle and just help that bearing go in. Alright, just like that. Beautiful. And now this is where we've got to set our preload and our float. So it's new bearings, well, old bearings that have worn a little bit. You're not going to have them necessarily as tight. New bearings, you also don't want them over tight. So really the best way to describe it is just over here, just spin, right? And as we're spinning the hub, we're just, that will, if any of the bearings are slightly on an angle, that will just make them square up, right? And then if we tighten this, right, nice and tight, this doesn't really want to spin, right? Over tight, but that's fine because we're just bedding in or just setting the bearings. And then what we're going to do is we're going to back, okay? So on a stub axle, I've got one hole drilled through it for the split pin that goes this way, and there's one that goes this way. So we'll back it off to, say, the first notch here, and it's spinning a lot better, right? A lot more free, but it also still feels a little bit tight. So if I go just a little bit more to like here, I'm now lined up with this slot, even though this slot here is in the way. And I spin this now, and it spins a lot more, right? But if I feel this way, pushing like this, there's no play. Now if I went back a bit more, so I'm now lined up with this hole, hear that? That means it's too loose. So we'll come back to where we were before, which is lining up there. No play, but she spins freely. So that's the aim, is to have it where there's no play, and it spins nice and freely. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drop our split pin in just to hold that location, because we're happy with that spot. Okay, and if you're unsure, like sometimes I can be, happy there. Sweet, I'm happy with that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put the tyre back on, and we're going to check for play with the tyre, because we can feel any sort of play will be exaggerated when you've got more leverage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tyre on with my centre cap off, so I can still access this castle nut, and then if there is any play, I can just continue to adjust that. So now when you are doing this, you just want to be careful that if there is any dirt on your tyre, it doesn't get into that exposed bearing. Alright, so I haven't done the wheel nuts up to their final torque setting. I've just done them up so the tyre is on the hub properly, and I'm not going to be feeling any slop in the hub. So I can wiggle this, and there's still no movement, so that's good. And then we get the tyre to spin. Obviously it's on the ground. Do that. Alright, spinning nice and freely. So that's really, really good. So nice and free, there's no movement whatsoever, so that's perfect. So now all we got to do is just split this split pin. Great, and then we'll just snip this one a bit shorter, enough length so that we can bend it back against the castle nut, but not so long that it's going to hit that silver washer. So beautiful. All right, so all we're going to do now is stick this dust cover back on. You can put grease in here if you'd like. I haven't, I'm not going to worry about it. There we go. Sounds so much quieter without all the sand in the brake as well. You notice that from the beginning. Stick this back on. So anyway, that's how you do wheel bearings for the first time. It's pretty easy. And yeah, that will be the end of the episode. So if you've liked it, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you as we start to head towards the south coast, eh, Jackie?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. See you later. Have a good one.